Hello, we're back again for the conclusion of Chapter 4 of My Louisiana Sky. This is Mr. Daniels, and we're going to go ahead and pick up right where we left off to close the chapter here and then maybe have some conversation following. Remember, we left off where Tiger was not wanting to wear that sunbonnet, and Granny has basically said, it's going to be hot outside, you are wearing your sunbonnet. And Tiger is going to have to put it on here soon. Page 43, here we go. I tied the miserable red calico bonnet under my chin, grabbed a bucket, and followed Granny and Mama to the garden to start our chore. Mama started picking everything on the vine, including the green peas and the dried up ones. Granny took the bucket from her and shook it upside down. She handed the bucket back to Mama. Only the purple ones, Corina. Every time we filled the bucket, we dumped the peas into a bushel basket at the end of the row. At first it seemed like a game to see how fast I could fill the bucket, but I soon tired of snapping peas from the vine and hear them laying with the tink-tink against the metal. We must have been a sight to see, the three of us standing there between the rows of pink-eyed purple hulls. A big old lady in overalls, a pretty childlike woman, and a skinny redhead with bony knees. All with sunbonnets plopped on our heads. I would die if Abby Lynn or Jessie Wade saw me like this. A few hours later, Jessie Wade came out of his house and sat on the wicker porch swing, looking in our direction. He pretended to read something, probably a Superman comic book, but I saw him peek at us over the pages. Later he disappeared and returned with the flower dishcloth tied around his head with the basket in his hand. He pranced around that porch, bending down like he was picking something and put it in the basket. He looked like he was playing a game we played in the church nursery when we were younger. But then I realized exactly what he was doing, the monkey. No matter what I looked like, I knew I didn't look that silly. To spot myself, I laughed. Granny's voice brought me back to my chore and the reason I was there. Tiger, what are you doing? She stood straight, rubbing the small of her back. Of course, by then Jessie Wade had sat down innocently and pretended to read again. Well, you better get back to work, Granny said. You should be working harder than anyone, remember? You have 24 chickens to pay back. Yes, ma'am. When she bent down to pick the peas again, I stuck out my tongue at Jessie Wade, and he did the same back to me. Even though Jessie Wade brightened my boring job for a moment, I couldn't help but think about how he was the reason I was out here for working my fingers to the bone and sweating under the sun. At that moment, I decided Jessie Wade was spoiled rotten. He used nice manners saying yes ma'am and no sir, but he'd never done a lick of work in his life. And here his daddy had this fine nursery. Granny and Mrs. Thompson had spoiled Jessie Wade because he'd been such a sickly baby. But the way I figured it, if Jessie Wade could hit a baseball and run the bases, he should be able to do a few chores. At noon, we broke for lunch. As we took our pails to the screen porch, Mrs. Thompson brought out iced tea and lemonade on a tray for us. She looked so crisp and clean in her white blouse and pink pedal pushers. I wish I had a pair of pedal pushers that cuffed at the calves like hers instead of my baggy shorts. I looked at Mama's loose house dress and silly sunbonnet. Suddenly she dropped her lunch pail and dashed toward the corner, grabbing at something. I got it! Mama held up a chameleon. I got a lizard! She shoved the gaping green creature under Miss Thompson's nose. Mrs. Thompson jumped back. Oh, ho, ho, you sure did, Corina. You were faster than Jessie Wade. Put it down, said Granny. Mama pouted, but she set the little chameleon free. She picked up her lunch pail and sat in the porch swing. Mrs. Thompson placed the tray on a small table between the two aluminum chairs. Well, sure y'all ain't gonna spend too much more time doing this, are you? I reckon we'll see the sunset here, Granny said, sitting behind one of the aluminum chairs. Mrs. Thompson sat in the other chair and poured a glass of tea for Granny and lemonade for Mama, Jessie Wade, and me. Miss Jewel, now you watch yourself, Miss Thompson said. Don't work yourself too hard. Oh, there's nothing like the hard work I've seen in my 72 years. Here she goes, I thought, talking about the good old days. I could practically recite her speech myself. In the good old days, Granny said, we didn't know what life was like if we didn't go to bed with aching bones and throbbing muscles. Don't you say, said Mrs. Thompson. I thought it was real nice how Mrs. Thompson could act so interested in someone who was saying the most uninteresting things. Mrs. Mama took a sip of the lemonade and squinted. Can I have some sugar, Miss Thompson? The lemonade is sour as Ma's pickles. Corina! Granny snapped. Tea sprang out of her mouth. Oh, that's quite all right, Miss Jewel. Corina, you're right, Michelle. Woodrow makes this lemonade kind of sour, and I always serve it with sugar on the side. I just forgot to bring it out today. Thanks for reminding me. She went into the house and returned with the sugar bowl. While Mama scooped several spoons of sugar into her glass, Jessie Wade asked me, Want to go sit over there under the tree? Sure, I said, yanking off my goofy bonnet. Don't take off too far, Tiger, Granny hollered. We didn't come here to play. My aching bones and throbbing muscles knew that for sure. We ate our sandwiches in a hurry and lay under the shade of the oak tree while we studied the clouds floating by. That one's a carriage with 3 horses, I said, pointing to the sky. Where? Jessie Wade asked. There, see? We sometimes played this game when we were bored. It's funny how whatever was on our minds floated right up from our heads into the sky and made a picture. Thinking about those rows and rows of purple holes waiting to be picked made me desperately wish for a horse-pulled carriage to carry me away, maybe to visit Aunt Dora Kay in Baton Rouge. Jessie Wade propped up on his elbows. Did you hear about Abby Lynn's new swimming pool? Nope, I said, trying not to act like that was the most exciting news I'd heard all summer. I'd never even seen a real swimming pool. Before long, Granny called me back and I dragged my feet to the garden. Jessie Wade caught up with me. Don't forget this, Tiger. He held out that stupid bonnet, grinning at me with his dimples showing. You might freckle up like a strawberry. In fact, I think I see a big freckle right there. He touched the tip of my nose. I snatched the bonnet from his hand and headed out to the garden. By mid-afternoon, my legs throbbed and my back ached something fierce. Why was it when I played baseball or went swimming in the creek, the sun slipped down as fast as butter melts on toast, but today it inched down as slow as a caterpillar crawls across Texas? Granny was a slave driver when it came to chores. It was as if she had to prove to everyone that she was a hard worker, even when she was just an old lady. About 3 o'clock, Mama came and plopped down on the ground. I can't do it no more. I'm tired and I hurt. We already had picked 4 bushels of peas. Well, where do you hurt? Granny asked. Everywhere. Get up, Corina. You don't see Tiger and me stopping, do you? But a few moments later, when I was staring at the Thompsons' house, wondering where Jessie Wade had gone in his privileged life, Granny said, Tiger, stop your daydreaming. Gracious, I have 1 daydreamer and 1 whiner. At 5 o'clock, Daddy was off work, and he joined us in the garden until the sun dropped into a pink and lavender horizon. I never thought I'd welcome the end of the day like I did this one. Okay, Granny finally said. Let's call it a day. Amen, hollered Mama. Amen, I whispered under my breath. So I'm not sure if you've ever been punished for a crime that you've done, having to work off what you did. But Tiger certainly enjoyed a nice long day paying for those baby chicks that they lost there by working in the plant nursery. One thing I like about this chapter is you definitely see Granny's personality coming through. Granny is definitely a person that admires hard work. And there she is. How old did they say she was? 72. She's out there doing all the chores herself, and definitely expects a lot of Mama. She does not baby Mama, even though Mama kind of acts like a 6-year-old. I could see a lot of people's personalities that would be trying to maybe go easy on Mama because she's mentally not stable. However, Granny expects the most of her. She wants her to get everything done the same way anybody else would, and that certainly goes in line with Tiger as well. Granny is a person that expects the most of others when they're working for her, and she definitely respects a long, honest day's work. We're going to go ahead and close off here and move on to Chapter 5, so thank you so much for listening.